Good evening. Yesterday, I have introduced Professor Krashen's hypothesis, and today I'll move to Professor Schumann's acculturation hypothesis. And today I'm very lucky because I am now in an empty room, so I don't need to stand in the corridor to record my research notes because it's late at night, and many students, they have already gone back to the dormitories. But I am still here, and today I plan to record my research notes for about 20 minutes, and I will finish Professor Schumann's acculturation hypothesis and probably move to the next part of the literature review. Well, actually, I've already finished reading all the literature review part, and I think I have learned a lot from the authors, and now I'm writing about my own essays. And today I also have a good news because today I have finished the data analysis part, especially um, the qualitative data. Oh no, not qualitative, but quantitative data. Excuse me, quantitative data, and I think it has already reached a very great result, and I can directly use that data in my essay, and it's very I think it's very easy for me to write the following conclusion or the result part because my data has already showed a very pleasing result, which is very helpful for me to write the following parts. Let's continue with Professor Schumann's acculturation hypothesis. So who is Professor Schumann? And Professor Schumann is an eminent American linguist, and he proposed the acculturation model. And this model has a story because this theory or this hypothesis or this model was developed from a pivotal longitudinal case study of a person whose name is Alberto, yes, Alberto, who is a 33-year-old Costa Rican, yes, Costa Rican immigrant learning English in the United States. So I think I need to remember this person's name, Alberto or Alberto, I think, Alberto, and his country or her country is Costa Rica, Costa Rican, and this is a longitudinal experiment, and I'll further explain this. Well, despite 10 months of exposure to English, Alberto showed minimal linguistic progress. Schumann attributed this stagnation to Alberto's limited integration with English-speaking communities, leading him to propose the acculturation theory. So this theory, just like what I've already mentioned, this theory stemmed from like a real case, a real longitudinal experiment, which happened to Alberto, who is an immigrant from Costa Rica to the United States. But after 10 months of exposure to English, Alberto didn't really show a significant progress of the English proficiency, and Professor Schumann attributed this kind of failure or stagnation to Alberto's limited integration with the English-speaking communities. So here is a quote about this acculturation theory. Well, second language acquisition is the byproduct of acculturation. Learners acquire a second language only to the extent that they acculturate, which means acculturate means socially and culturally integrate with the target language group. So we must remember the key term or terminology of this concept or this theory or this model, which is acculturation. So acculturation is, socially and culturally integrate with the target language group. It's a kind of process of integration, and it happens on two different dimensions. First is socially, and second is culturally. So we must memorize this concept, which is very, very important here. So as the definition that I have introduced above, you can see that there are two different dimensions. The first is this kind of cultural dimension, and the second is this social dimension. And I will introduce social dimension at first. Let me see. Or this kind of social distance. Professor Schumann here used the term distance, or you can understand it in another way as difference, or just like the differences between different cultures or societies. You can understand that in this way. And I will introduce social distance and psychological distance here. Oh, I said something wrong before, because those two interrelated dimensions are not cultural dimensions or social dimensions, but social distance and psychological distance. So these two dimensions should be remembered. So the first is social distance, and it includes 8 different subsets. The first is social dominance. 1.1 social dominance, which is the first part of social distance. Social dominance, it means that whether one group holds power over the other. This kind of power, you can understand it as the political power, economic power, or cultural power. This kind of inequality, you can understand it broadly as inequality. For example, I think probably like a century ago in China, after the Opium War, the European troops and the American troops, they invaded China, and at that time it was the Qing dynasty. So at that time, they held very strong power dominance against the Qing dynasty. So generally, even though people at that time they could have the contact with the foreign people, they still showed a strong sense of refusal, or the Qing dynasty also tried to isolate the old China. So I think this is probably the case of showing the power dominance or the social dominance. So this means that political factors or economic factors or this kind of social inequality among different kind of cultural groups can have a strong impact on the language acquisition, or this kind of process which is called acculturation, this kind of integration process. And the second is the integration pattern. So it means the learner's group's approach to the target language, whether it is a simulation or preservation of their own culture. I think this is not like a concept of duality, because it doesn't mean that you can only choose one side, either whether assimilation or isolation. You can absolutely find a way that can both embrace some new culture while also maintaining your old culture or some virtues, especially some traditional virtues. Just like China, now we have a kind of political slogan which is called the rejuvenation of traditional Chinese culture. So how to understand the word rejuvenation is something that we need to consider very carefully, because rejuvenation never means merely learning from the past or rejuvenate everything in the tradition. But rejuvenation means embracing the world while preserving what deserves to be preserved. Just like what I've mentioned, some virtues some morality, some moralities. Um, those are good traditions, therefore we need to preserve them. But we have to admit that for example, some Western culture, some Korean culture, some pop culture, they are also, like a very, very important part in today's world. So we need to move, we need to follow the trend of the time, and absolutely we need to absorb them, embrace them, and learn from them, and inject more vitality to our culture. So I think this is at least China's integration or assimilation pattern, um, which I think is it shows China's wisdom, because I absolutely totally agree with that, and I think it's reasonable, and I am very proud of that. And the third is enclosure. How isolated the learners group is. For example, someone living in a segregated communities would probably have an impact on his or her assimilation process. Mm, for example, generally speaking, I think if let me think. Well, enclosure. For example, if you live in a small village, and in that village you share the same language, but in this world only the villagers could understand, then, well, I think if you only live in that village, then you don't need to, learn, for example, English or Chinese, those majority languages. So in that case, I think the assimilation process will be very, very difficult, because first of all, you don't need that, and secondly, um, if you don't choose to move out of that village, then why do you learn another language? So I think in that case, the more isolated you are, the less the less potential you will have to have a smoother process of acculturation. However, I think if you choose to move outside of that village, and you know that your language is only spoken by a very, very small number of people, then I think that process of acculturation would be smoother for you, because since you have already decided to move out of that village, then theoretically you will embrace the world, because why bother moving out? So it means that you love the world, you love other places, and you want to move out. Then it shows your passion for other cultures, other languages, and therefore you will find it easier to learn other languages, because you psychologically accept other languages, other cultures, and you psychologically admire them, or you want to be a part of them. So this is how I understand enclosure. And the fourth is cohesiveness. Well, how tightly knit the learners group is. Well, according to Professor Schumann's idea, high cohesiveness reduces target language interaction. Well, I think this is correct, because high cohesiveness, I think, Chinese people are, I think, is famous for their unity or their cohesiveness. I think this is probably influenced by political system, but it's something that we choose and we are proud of. Absolutely, we support that. Well, I think in China, in reality, we generally tend to think math or Chinese or geography, physics are more important than the second language, because in China we have a very large amount of very large population. And generally, if you only live in China and you never go out of the world, you literally don't need to speak English because it is not a kind of multinational country. Unlike the United States, I mean, which is which consists of different races or ethnics. So I mean, those two countries are quite different. So in China, you only need to know how to speak Chinese, and especially with the advancement or development of artificial intelligence or other machine translations, you really need you probably if you want to speak English, the only thing that you need is a mobile phone in China. So I think this is probably a proper case to explain Professor Schumann's idea, because the more cohesive a group is, probably the less potential they will have to have a smooth process of assimilation of acculturation. So high cohesiveness reduces target language interaction. And 1.5 is size factor. The relative size of the learners group will also have an impact on the language. Professor Schumann's idea is that larger groups may have less need for target language contact, which I think I've already explained this in 1.4, because China absolutely is a very, very large group, and therefore we generally don't need another language if you only live in China. And 1.4 is cultural congruence. Cultural congruence basically means the similarities of different cultures. For example, I think some European cultures are similar, and you can know that from languages, is including the American culture. However, probably Chinese culture and Korean culture or Japanese culture are more similar. I know you can also see from the language, and probably in some research, we are called like the Eastern culture, and American or Britain or other European countries, they are together called the Western culture. So you can see, based on those two huge categories, you can know that the cultural congruence between the West and the East are not that, I mean, cannot reach a very high level. And 1.7 is the attitude factor, mutual attitudes between the two groups. Yes, it's about the mutual attitude. And this is the thing that I want to emphasize because, for example, I love British culture, I love American culture, and I absolutely love Chinese culture. Well, this is like, how to say, this is just my personal attitude, but it doesn't necessarily mean that British people can welcome me to become one part of their culture. So we need mutual attitude towards each other, and absolutely there are positive attitude and negative attitudes. So so this attitude factor, I think, is easier to be understood. And 1.8, which is the last point of this social distance, is the intended length of residence. Basically, it means how long the learners plan to stay in the target language environment. And the longer you plan to stay, the higher potential you will have to have a smoother or to have a kind of easier process of acculturation. I think this is also easy to be understood. I mean, if I really want to stay and further my study, say in the University of Oxford, which is my dream university, or the University of Cambridge, which is also my dream university. I think I mean, if I really have this kind of plan or dream, then I definitely want to stay in Britain as long as I can. Well, if I could have enough money, or if I could be accepted there by the higher education institutions. I mean, but I do have this kind of plan, so I try to practice my English speaking every day, and I try to do some academic research in relation to the programs or my majors um, or to the programs that I'm going to apply to or my current majors, which are translation and linguistics. I have two different kind of majors, by the way. So I think the intended length of residence would absolutely affect me. Well, there's another example. Like if I only, for example, if I attend an academic conference, for example, in Italy, then I think I won't study Italian very thoroughly because I only need to participate in that conference, and the language that I'll use is absolutely English instead of Italian. Then I won't learn, much about the Italian, I probably only need to learn like thank you uh, or just like hello or goodbye, some expressions just like that. So I think this is also easy, very easy point. And the next part is the psychological distance. But basically today I don't have enough time because I have already recorded for more than 20 minutes and it's pretty late at night and I have to go back to the dormitory. Otherwise my dorm mates, they will go to sleep. And by the way, tomorrow I said that it was raining outside, but the time that I, went out, I found that the rain has already stopped, and it was very, very lucky. Well, someone just disturbed me, so I just paused my recording, and now I continued and finished the last part of my today's research notes sharing. I mentioned that yesterday when I went out, I found the rain has already stopped. So I think I felt I'm pretty lucky. And today I've already finished um, the how to say the accum no not accumulation but the calculation. Okay, the calculation of my data, and also it reached a very very pleasant result. And I think I'm very lucky these days. And I think probably this is the time that my efforts pay off. So I'll keep on moving tomorrow, and I'll work just like I'm working very hard today, and and probably like um, several months later, I will apply to the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge because I'm going to graduate here, and I need to further my study, and I really want to study in the best schools in this world. However, I probably sometimes I will doubt my ability, so I just want to do more. I don't think that I am a very, very clever person, but I think I am very diligent, and it seems that, well, I have already reached to some point that I can see the results because doing academic research or learning from other people's literature work is a very very hard thing because I'm just doing all those things alone and I don't have a tutor or right now I don't have a personal tutor. So I wrote this I wrote all those essays all by myself. So it's a very tough experience. But I think I'll be very lucky in the end, and I hope that I can be successful when I am applying to the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge. And I really hope that my dream will eventually come true. Well, this is today, and tomorrow I'll move on to the second half of the Professor Schumann's theories, the acculturation theory, and then I'll move to the next part of the literature review, and I will absolutely continue writing my essays. And this is the end of today. This is NSY's Research Notes, and see you tomorrow. Good night.